It's only Redis Sidekick that we've rolled them out on. That's the only place we've rolled them out.
How come they're doing so much work if it's just doing the queues?
Because the queues are a lot of work.
There's a lot of jobs.
Yeah, it's a lot of jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, and the dequeuing is work.
Yeah, just but pushing them on and then pulling them off, and even just because there's not a long.
Yeah, because it like the update all mirror worker creates like 2 jobs for each project. That's okay.
Yeah. It's not like it's just compute.
But the thing
the Redis network is look at the Redis network. That's quite insane how much traffic that was generating.
Share your screen, Andrew.
No.
One thing I think
it was an artifact. Sorry. Yeah.
One thing I think we already kind of know because we put it in a bunch of comments, but I really wish we'd written down somewhere is like how many jobs we expect it to be processing right now.
Yeah.
Because we can see that it's processing a lot fewer jobs, but is it processing too few or just the right amount? Like, I mean, if we turned off mirroring, this would all go down, and that would be bad.
That's the thing we saw last time. No, like it wasn't processing any jobs. So yeah, the graphs dropped, which was great, but yeah.
So I mean, we were doing like 70 jobs per second, and now we're doing like 7, so like 10%. Is that good, bad?
So from what I remember, and this is sort of kind of out of date facts, but I think it's a reasonable approximation, about 10% of projects are public. So I normally use that as a rule of thumb for what percentage of projects will be paying. It's not, I'm not saying what percentage of projects are paying, because I don't know, and obviously that's a bit more sensitive, but about 10% of projects are public. Public mirrors will still continue to work, as will paying private mirrors. It's just the free private mirrors that should stop working. So that's my sort of
so
public keeps working.
Public always gets
happening.
Public always gets all gold features.
So, that was quite a big disappointment, and Marin pointed that out, and then I gathered some numbers because most of the mirrors were actually public mirrors, and that's the only ones that we're keeping an eye on right now because of the weirdness with the plan ID and stuff. So if we're missing mirrors, it's the pay, like we won't get alerted if paying mirrors aren't being processed, which is not good. There's an issue for that.
But we have private mirrors, right? Like on the security project, doesn't that have a private mirror?
Yeah, but those are push mirrors.
You're right, they are.
I mean,
I could create a private mirror.
We should probably just do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Like, let's find out whether we are doing well or not.
Do we have private repos on GitHub that we can mirror from?
We don't need a GitHub repo to mirror. We can just mirror anything, I think.
That's true.
I'm just going to mirror GitLab, the GitLab project in a private project. How do I actually do that?
Small. Don't you want to do something small, rather, Sean?
That's a fair point. How do I actually do that? Let me just create the project and then I'll set up the mirroring. Then I can't actually figure out how to do it from the creation.
You can create a project and then just add a remote URL and then.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. Yeah, because I'm sure you can do it with the import project from somehow. But maybe repo by URL.
Or
Mirror
you
repository.
can use
there we go.
The repo for CI/CD.
Right, yeah.
Marin raised a good point as well. Like, we should hold off a little bit on removing the feature flag, unless, like, if there's a huge backlash tonight when Americans wake up and so on, then we might hear from above that we need to enable it again.
Not only tonight, like we need to date the feature flag removal 1 month out, because this has a long tail. So only in 1 month we should consider removing the feature flag.
Okay, Marius, can you put like a due date on that issue you linked?
Yes, sure. There's also a question from Henry in the production channel about the sidekick true output for priority. and I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Oh, have a look.
Sorry, where's that? In the production channel.
Yeah, where I disabled the feature flag.
Yes. Yeah, that's
How does the priority utilization graph work?
so it counts the number of workers that are busy. So so we have concurrency times nodes times processes. So it sums that up. So that basically you could have, say, 100 jobs running at the same time, and then it looks at how many jobs are running, and basically it's percentage of that. So if you've got 500 workers and there's 250 jobs running, then you're 50%. And we've kind of, like, I spoke to Craig about this, it's not super intuitive, but we sort of aim to be in the band of like 23 to 43%. So basically 10% either side of 33%. And it's a little bit counterintuitive. Like if we had auto scaling on those groups, we'd probably aim for 50% and just kind of keep it on that. But 33% is kind of like we do it at that level because it gives us some extra capacity, but obviously the threads will slow down. Because obviously it's Ruby threading. So it kind of gives us a bit of capacity, but yeah.
So right now we're at 42%.
Yeah, so that's I think it's got a 1 hour range vector on that query. So it'll slow down. It's kind of designed to be like a very rounded graph, so you can kind of read it nicely. But if you explore that and change the range vector to $interval, you'll get a much more accurate, for now, value.
Do we expect any alerting to go off?
No.
It might. Is there anything in the pool mirrors like the old alerts? Certainly none of the new alerts will.
There's an alert that the one that I just mentioned, that's going to only watch the public mirrors. So, but we don't expect that to go off. It went off when we first tried this, which was obviously like broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we first tried it, it went off because we were spending so much time doing nothing with the projects that we don't mirror anymore. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, that's it. So the update all mirrors worker was never be like, it couldn't fill the capacity up, so it wouldn't schedule any jobs that needed to be worked on because it spent all its time checking projects that don't need to be mirrored. That's what Sean fixed.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late to the party, but I just wanted to understand why we dropped so much on throughput for the pull mirrors. I don't fully understand it.
We just have fewer jobs.
Okay, because the change is just going through less projects anymore, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're just not mirroring as much.
Yeah, I think you might be missing the context.
Yeah,
you might be missing the context of the whole story.
Yeah.
And the whole story is we offered pull mirroring for free for everyone for I think a year or something. And this was an effort to do CI/CD for GitHub projects. And we always had a due date of 22nd of March. And a month ago, we started discussing whether we are going to end up doing it or not. Product wanted to postpone this deadline, but we at Scalability, like pool mirroring, and you know as well, right? Like how much grief has pool mirroring caused us.
You just set an
we
alert today because of that, yeah.
Yeah, so we spent like the past month discussing with product and getting the approvals to actually shut this off. So the decision was made to do that. But when we turned it on like at the beginning of the week or Sunday, I think, we had an unintended consequence where everything was just stopped, basically. But the idea here is only people who are paying customers and people who have open source projects will be able to use this, not everyone.
Cool. Yeah, I saw the feature flag and the ticket to it, so I understand it now. Thank you.
Welcome.
And what's
Thanks
the
for asking.
expected drop-off in number of, so from a Git perspective, I see a drop-off of about, what is it, 5/6, which seems unreasonably big.
No, that's exactly what, you know,
That's pretty much.
this is why we've been so heavy on this, CJ, is because every time we run any of that BPF tracing, it's like random pull mirrors that no one's looked at in the last year. And it's like, you know, that's exactly, I hadn't actually looked at that, but that's exactly what I would expect.
Can I
To be
ask,
clear as well, like,
before we continue, can I ask one of you to create an issue and start dropping logs and start dropping Grafana links so that we can collect this data as we observe things?
Marius, do you already have an issue for this?
I don't have an issue for monitoring.
Okay.
I just have the issue to remove it.
Okay, fine.
CJ, what graph were you looking at? Because I'm looking at the front page of Giddily main and I don't see anything.
Fetch
super,
remote.
like... Sorry?
That's the only RPC fetch remote.
Okay.
I can drop a link in Zoom chat.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I haven't used this dashboard in a long time.
You're probably the one who made the last edits as well.
Yeah. Why has it gone up again? I've noticed that on the saturation, the worker saturation's also gone up. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we have the same throughput again, like before.
Yeah, something's changed.
The estimated median latency went back up. So is it possible there are just some jobs that were taking longer?
But yeah, the saturation's also spiked as well. So yeah, and that might just be, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of surprising. And the throughputs, so it's not just that, it's actually also the number of jobs has gone up, Sean, because if you look at the throughputs, it's also gone up. So it's not just longer jobs, it's actually...
Yeah, this is kind of the challenging thing, because it's only selecting the right mirrors. Like, it's very hard to tell, because this is a thing that like changes from point to point. Like, it's very hard to tell how many should be processed at any one, so like how lumpy this is right now.
Yeah.
Basically. Because like the first set might have just picked a bunch where there were only a few to be processed, and now there are more to be processed, but we couldn't see that before because it was all just maxed out all the time. So it's hard to
well, that's
hard to be certain.
I don't know how we select the next batch to process, but do you think over time it'll even itself out?
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's definitely gone up now. Or actually, it's gone up and now it's dropping again.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like it's
Yeah,
so
it's lumpy.
yeah. um, let me just try and read the code and understand it. So I think previously we had. Sorry, go on, Bob.
Go. You have the code open.
Yeah, but I haven't pulled in my changes, so I'm looking at the old code. But previously we had a thing where we had a maximum capacity we could process at any one time, and I think we were constantly at that capacity. Whereas now we should be below it a lot of the time. So we could potentially pull more in because of that capacity that we've got set than we would have done before. So we might mirror some things more often than we did before because we're not mirroring as many things as we were before. But I don't know how to verify that right now.
Also bear in mind, we've always had like kind of lumpy graphs for pool mirrors. If you look here, the first graph is the one. Can you share your screen, Bob? Yeah, I can.
Load average graph. Yeah, so here, that lumpiness is high. Yep.
Here, the mirror updates per second, we've always had this kind of hilly things. I don't know exactly where they come from, but yeah.
We should put effort into smooth that out if we can somehow, because like that sort of lumpiness has impacts downstream, right? On like Gitterly and Postgres and Redis, and you know, if we can make that smooth, generally you'll get much better performance. I don't know how possible it is and how hard it is, because I don't have any idea about that scheduling algorithm, but it would probably be a
I also
look at.
And this is a classic sort of like, I'm going to say this, but I don't think we should actually do it now. I also wonder if like we're processing many fewer mirrors, we could make the scheduling simpler, because, you know, we don't have to like, we basically before, like from what I gather, it was the process of like processing mirrors as fast as possible, like up to our limit, but not beyond it. So like we're just constantly hammering against that limit. But if we're processing many fewer, we probably, hopefully, can be under that limit all the time, and we can do something simpler and easier to understand.
Why wouldn't you want to keep the knapsack and just decrease the limit?
That's also a reasonable point, but I don't know if anybody who was
seems
involved.
to be working, right?
What's the knapsack?
It's a dynamic programming exercise where you have a knapsack and you can only pack, let's say, 10 kilos of stuff, and then you need to decide how.
So you're basically saying we can reduce the capacity, right?
Yeah, so make the knapsack smaller and keep the algorithm. Is it knapsack or knapsack? Someone who speaks English.
In English, it's like knapsack. It's one of those weird English words. Yeah, it's.
I hate the K and the N in English, but together. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
They're just random. Yeah.
I felt so Dutch to say knapsack.
Probably comes from that. Who knows? Could you not? Because clearly the thing with that is you actually want to set that size dynamically, depending on how much. But
it is
the other thing is that. Okay.
Yeah, it somehow responds to how many mirrors we are processing, I think.
I mean, so we have a maximum that's set somewhere, and that, yeah, we shouldn't be hitting that. The maximum is somewhere in application settings, if I remember correctly. And that's how many mirrors can be running at the same time, any given point.
I think we need to tune it, because basically now we're back at where we were.
But looking at the overdue graph, we should churn through that first and then get to a state where we have lower load, right? So it seems that the dip was first, we scheduled pool mirrors we weren't supposed to run, so we just dequeued those, and Sidekick was very happy about it. But now we're just scheduling more stuff that we actually need to process.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it seems that we actually should monitor the updates overdue, and then if that trends down, then finally someday in the next week we'll have lower load.
Right. Well, the positive thing about that is that at least we can see Craig's C2 upgrade like in its full glory, because we're back at where we were.
Those graphs that you're mentioning, ZJ, aren't exactly correct because they don't include everything they need to include because this subscription weirdness. They're only including the open source stuff,
So
which I think is the bulk of it.
If you expand the overdue graph out to the last 2 days, the current like sort of peaks and troughs don't really show up anymore. So that suggests that, yeah, like it probably is over a longer period that we need to look at this. Because like you literally can't, you can barely see the current like sort of up and down from what we just did compared to like when there were 15K mirrors overdue a little while ago.
But Sean, going back to your original point, like I don't know this code, but it seems like everyone's a little bit weird, the scheduling code, but it seems like everyone's a little bit sort of like it seems like it has very high cognitive overhead to actually understanding what's going on in it. And maybe, you know, to your point about simplifying it, maybe that's a signal that it needs to be simplified.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where like the cognitive load is there because we made a lot of changes, and it's probably not a great idea to change it if you don't understand why we made the changes in the first place, unless something like this happens where it's like an external thing that would like cause sort of a rethink. But I think we could consider looking at that as like you know, just completely replace it by a feature flag, like, you know, as in like do the old like capacity management, do the new capacity management from here, because we have this external thing which should reduce the load. I'm just trying to figure out as well, like what.
But does the one scheduler like schedule all the even ones and the other one schedule all the odd ones, or like, because surely if you've got two schedulers that conflict.
No, I just mean run one at a time, but like be able to switch them out rather than try and like change the existing one to simplify it.
Okay.
Some of the reasoning behind this complicated stuff is because we were hammering ourselves to death with pool mirrors at some point.
I mean, if you go back to 7 days on that graph from 2 days, it, you know, the peaks are even higher. Like, you know, you're hitting up to 30,000 overdue. And this kind of, these graphs kind of are pretty scary.
No, that 30,000 is our own thing when we flipped the switch and the feature wasn't working.
Oh, right. Okay, of course.
But the 10K peaks are accurate then.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to be like, I couldn't tell you what's causing those 10K peaks like in the past graph.
Work, like if they come in when people are working a lot on those external repositories, so that means
so if the mirrors have a lot to process.
So then, the capacity is taken, so we don't schedule other things, which means overdue grows.
So I've just suddenly thought about the guys at GitHub right now who like, something's happened. Like all our anomaly graphs are like dropped out. Like we don't know what's going on here. In the operations team there, they're going to be very happy about this as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, the throughput for the pull mirror is sort of, so hard to interpret these. But like even the spike that was there was kind of below the previous normal.
Yeah.
And now it's going back down again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid that because we schedule, like every time a mirror finishes, we schedule it half an hour out. So maybe this is going to flatten out after a while when they start to be.
Do we not have a random interval on that as well?
Yeah, a little bit of randomness before
like
and
seconds
after.
or minutes?
Let me check that.
One thing I can do, which I'm going to try and do now, is to try and figure out how many free private mirrors have not been updated since we did this, because that's like, it doesn't tell us anything about what we should be seeing in the graphs, but it does tell us something about like correctness, right? Like, you know, is this actually working? So I'm going to try and figure that out right now.
Makes sense.
Sean, what's that class called again? Project mirror. Project has one.
What are you looking for? the import state.
Yeah, that one. Thank you.
The jitter, yeah.
The jitter is in GitLab Mirror, which is a file in lib.
So 1 minute. 1 minute, around 30 minutes.
Okay. So over a few days, we should get a flattening out then, right? Over the weekend.
Yeah, my bigger concern right now is, and this is because I changed the query, so like it's top of my mind, is correctness. So like, if we are currently not scheduling any mirrors that we shouldn't be, and we are scheduling all the mirrors that we should be, then we can, like, this is lower than it was before, and we can just leave it running. And if it doesn't even out, we can look into that. But if we are scheduling something that we shouldn't be, or worse, not scheduling something that we should be, then we need to fix the thing again, which is gonna mean we have to like do this whole thing again potentially. If we're scheduling something we shouldn't be, that's not as big a deal, because someone's getting something for free that they shouldn't, which we can, you know, fix later on. But if we're not scheduling a mirror that somebody's paying for, then yeah.
But how do we find out whether we are not doing something that we should be doing? Like, that's a really hard thing to do.
Right. Well, we have to wait until see if someone tells us, right? Like, basically, because as far as we're aware, like, you know, Marius, Bob, and I have all looked at this. Myra's looked at this. Like, we are pretty sure that this is selecting the right mirrors, but you know, maybe there was a bug in the old code that was scheduling some mirrors that it shouldn't have been.
Sure,
you know.
But if you run a query every so often in Rails console, that tells you how many like private paid repositories are due an update or haven't been updated in however long, you know, in the last hour, and we just run that every now and again. Wouldn't that be a good enough signal?
Yeah, but that's assuming that I can get the query to tell us how many private paid repositories there are, which I'd be doing the same way as I'm doing the scheduling. So
right, yeah. Okay.
It's kind of, so like, I'm pretty confident it's right. I just like, it's very hard to know, because the way our subscriptions work is very confusing, as Marius and Bob and I found out the other day. So yeah.
Which is also why our overdue alerting thing only takes public projects into account. And again, if we update that alerting, I'd be using Sean's query because it's a complicated query and he already wrote it.
Okay. Someone's doing scans on our Redis sidekick.
What did you
at a
say?
regular interval. Sorry, someone's doing scans on our Redis Sidekick. I wonder what that is and why they're doing it, because they shouldn't be.
Can you see, is that, and which scan operation, like on what?
Like the scan across the key space.
Oh, key,
But
keys.
it's yeah, like not a keys, but a
Okay.
scan, but it's
Not
like
so not
pretty
like a scan for a
regular,
set.
which sounds no, not a S scan, like a normal, like across the entire
Okay.
key space, which is just like wasteful and it shouldn't really be getting done.
No, so I just, as a thing that it's not, I was looking at how scikit-cron worked yesterday, and that stores a set that then points to keys that it uses, so it's
Yeah.
not that.
That's how Faye does it as well. It has another set. Cool. I'll be right back.
Cool. So should we close this call, because I think we got to a common understanding of what's happening.
Yeah, I'm going to paste some graphs in the issue that Sean created and
Perfect.
try to write up our common reasoning behind it.
I'll share this link to the recording so that we can also add it to the issue. Thanks everyone for participating. This was enjoyable sync.